So there's a fair bit of news going around at the moment surrounding player exits and players coming in because it'll be in January. And one that's now sort of coming to the forefront is Luis Guilherme, which I want to talk about. I want to kind of avoid talking about anything negative, really, especially the way the mood's sort of shifting now at West Ham. You know, you want to keep that up. Do you know what I mean? I want to keep that feeling going, and I'm feeling really good. I've got to be honest. I'm looking forward to the game today. So please don't think this is some sort of negative video. I'm slagging off the club and things too much. I really don't want to be doing that. But I think this is one of those stories that can't be ignored. Do you know what I mean? It can't something you can sort of put, oh, it's not worth talking about. I think it really does need talking about. This Luis Guilherme situation is not good as far as I'm concerned in terms of the club and how we've gone about our business. And I just think there's a lot of question marks there's a lot of questions that need answering here. Let's talk about it a little bit and sort of break it down of what I'm actually talking about. So just to sort of recap, West Ham in the summer, it was our first summer signing under Tim Steidten this summer. And it was a big Steidten signing, wasn't it? He was out in Brazil quite a fair bit, as we know. He'd been sort of flying back and forth and he'd been doing a lot of scouting with his team and blah, 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 blah. And we'd heard that West Ham were going to go for Luis Guilherme. Now, much like everybody else, right? I didn't know much about the player at all. Had to do my usual research, go online, you're looking at clips, you're looking at reports and all that kind of stuff to sort of understand this player. Now, I'm going to be honest. I think there's... all right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll talk for the story, then I'll come back to this. So then we then go and buy the player for around, was it 25 million pounds, which raised a lot of eyebrows. Let's be honest. We all went, bloody hell, that's a lot of money for an 18-year-old Brazilian kid. Let's be honest. Considering West Ham, how we are as a football club, do you know what I mean? If you really think about it, West Ham, when you know, we haven't got a bottomless pit of money where we can just keep spending money on willy-nilly and, oh, well, it didn't work out, not the end of the world. We operate in a pretty tight budget. Don't get me wrong, we're not a poor football club, but we're not a Chelsea, we're not a Man City or etc. We can just sort of spend. So it felt to me like it was a big statement from West Ham to go, we're going to spend this volume of money on an 18-year-old. Now, we've now brought him into the football club. I felt the expectation was, well, I think there's three routes. There's three routes you can go down when you bring in a player like this, right? I think there's sort of three routes when he arrives at the club. The first route, which I think would have been the most sort of obvious one and the most likely one, was that Guilherme was going to come into the club and go out on loan. West Ham would then say, right, we're going to go and send you to the Championship. You're going to play a season down there, toughen him up. You know what I mean? Get him used to English football with the view that next season you will then ideally come and start forcing your way into the first team at Premier League level. But the club didn't do that. And it was kind of suggested early on, we're not going to do it. He's not going out on loan. We consider him part of the first team. Oh, okay, that's interesting. But we weren't seeing that. We weren't seeing him as part of the first team. Yes, we were seeing it in training videos and all that kind of stuff. Oh, he's with the first team. But let's be honest, in terms of match days, he's not really a part of it. He's made the odd appearance here and there, but he's not really you'd consider a proper squad player that's getting his minutes in. No, I wasn't seeing anything. So the other question is then, well, why didn't we put him in the academy? Would you know, considering his age, wouldn't it have been wise to say, well, go and play with the under-21s, again, with the view of getting used to English football, getting a bit bruised and getting used to it, and then with the view that, again, you're going to then get yourself into the first team. But we didn't do that. So we haven't really done anything with Luis Guilherme. We've just basically he's come over here on this hefty fee for an 18-year-old lad, poor bloke, by the way, with all his family. You know, I feel for him that the fact he's been brought over here from Brazil. Don't get me wrong, he's being compensated, but well, in terms of his football development, there hasn't been any, is there? We just put him in you're just going to train with the first team. We're not going to have you involved in the first team squad, really, though. You might make the odd appearance, sort of cameo. That's basically what you're going to do. And that's it. And, you know, what are we, 6 months into his time at the club, and now we're now going to sell him? I think there's a lot of questions that need answering over this transfer. It's not a good look for West Ham, and it's not a good look for Tim Steidten. Now, I feel I've got to sort of put a disclaimer into this, because people, every time I sort of talk about Steidten in a negative way, or if I suggest that I'm not happy with certain things, people seem to have this view that I'm got it in for Steidten. I've got an agenda against him, which I absolutely haven't. I want Steidten to do really well. I was really excited when we hired Steidten. And also, I feel like then some people suggest that, well, you know, you're not looking at the other issue, which is David Sullivan. Listen, they're two different separate things. I'm talking about here, the Luis Guilherme one, I don't really think you can pin that on Sullivan. I think this one really has to sit with Steidten. This is what he's come to the club to do. You know, the Pearl Diver. He's the one that's been travelling to Brazil with his recruitment team, with his scouts, to get these deals done. And he's brought in Guilherme. I mean, you can't really blame other people. This is what we've hired him to do. I just think this is a really bad look. And I'm disappointed for all parties here. I'm disappointed that, one, we've got the deal done with no real plan. I mean, as I say, what was the plan then? You spent all this money on this lad, brought him over here, and it just looks what to do what exactly? Sit with a train with the first team. That was the remit. It's not good enough. There was no real plan or strategy, it feels like, around Guilherme. And the fact that that hampered a lot of our transfer business this summer. We know it did. I mean, people, it's a lot of money. £25 million is a lot of money, considering the fact people talk about a net spend of around £100 million in the summer. Well, that's a quarter of it. That's a lot of money to spend on an 18-year-old unproven player that we've not even given more than half a year, and now we're willing to sell. I think it's a bad look, and it's not a good look, unfortunately, for Tim Steidten as well, who's already up against it. He's already got pressure on him in terms of relationships. He's fallen out with Moyes, fallen out with Lopetegui. That was not a really good look. You've also got the Nicholas Fulkrug signing, which we talked about before. That's not a good look at all. We've signed this injury-prone player now that's been forever injured, and 32 years of age this year. It's not a good look. We again spent a lot of money on high wages. It's a concern. It is a concern. And I just feel like this Guilherme situation now, the fact we're now willing already in the next transfer window, halfway through a season, to sell a player that we've just spent £25 million on, it's a really bad look. It's not just Tim Steidten. This is the football club as well. I think the club in general need to take some responsibility for this, because, as I say, to bring in someone with that volume of spend, there's surely got to be a coherent plan of what you're going to be doing with him. I can understand possibly not from day one, because you want to see the player. You might want to say, look, okay, let's see how he gets on. Put him training with the first team. Let's see how he adapts. But the fact is, we're months, half a year into his time at West Ham now, and we know I've not seen anything from Guilherme. I've not seen anything in terms of development, any plan for him. And I've got to be honest, and I know this might sound a bit harsh, I've not really seen anything from Guilherme in general. Even if you go online and look at clips, usually if you're going to be buying, say, this Brazilian superstar, you'd expect to see some clips, wouldn't you? To go, gee, look at this player, look at what he's done, and look at this, wow, look at that goal. You'd expect to see something. I've not really seen anything. Maybe I'm being a bit wrong. Maybe someone will forward me a video and go, look at this, But all I'm saying is, from what I've seen of Guilherme, I've not seen enough to ever suggest that warranted that kind of spend. This is a really, really bad look for Tim Steidten. It really is. And I just cannot see how he gets around this now, because it's a very difficult one to argue, isn't it? It's hard. I mean, for instance, like with the Nicholas Fulkrug argument, he could argue, well, look, I can't really control injuries. I mean, the club, I'd completely come back and say, well, look at his record. However, he could lean on that a little bit and say, look, he hasn't been bad, because, to be fair to Fulkrug, in the lead up to joining West Ham, the actual period lead up to that, his injury record wasn't too bad. The years before that were terrible, but he'd had a period where he wasn't too bad. So Steidten could argue that one. I don't see how we can argue the Guilherme one. I think he's going to really struggle with this. It's a bad situation to be in for him, and I feel like it's the pressure's now really starting to mount. We've already sort of reported that it looks like the future's a little bit bleak for Steidten, but I just feel like the fact that the club now are open to selling Guilherme, that's a bad look, and it's embarrassing, really, isn't it? If you're the head of recruitment and you've said to the club, go and spend this money on this superstar, we're going to develop him, and within a few months you're literally going to flog him. I think it's it doesn't paint a very good picture, and it doesn't paint a picture of someone that's going to be at the club for much longer. I'm going to be honest. I'm really concerned about it, actually. I think it's and it works as well. It's a shame, isn't it? Because you think of what we could have done in the summer. Obviously, John Duran being the one I'm kind of thinking more there. We'd have had an extra £20 million in our pocket. We could have got that deal done. We were obviously quite under tight constraints at that point, and what we'd spent. So I'm quite disappointed, actually. And I've got to say as well, to make this really clear, I'm really disappointed for the player. I feel for Guilherme. I really don't want this to come across like I'm saying the guy's useless, he's a bad player. He hasn't had a chance. The poor lad hasn't had a chance. He's moved all the way over across the world to live in London. 18 years old. I mean, bloody hell. I mean, you're still a kid. You've obviously, he's come with his family. I really feel for him, you know what I mean? And he's come here, he's probably thinking, well, what are you actually doing with me? Am I going to be playing? Am I going to be involved with this? Where's my development? So, yeah, very, very, very disappointing, but it is what it is. It does appear to me at the moment that he is going to go. The language coming from the club appears to be that way. They're kind of playing it down and not suggesting it's definitely going to happen, but the reports seem to suggest I think something's going to happen. So I think he will go this month. What we will get back, I'm not quite sure. I've seen 30 million euros being quoted. It looks like we might possibly get a return on our spend, which at least be something. But yeah, it's not good. Not a good look at all. Look, I don't want it to be negative though. I want this to be a good day because West Ham have got Crystal Palace this afternoon, and it's a big game for us. It's an opportunity to really get ourselves up and running for the second half of this season. Obviously back in the hunt for European football. I feel like if we get this win, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we'll definitely get there. It's a tall order considering how the first half season's been, but that a win today I think would give us that kind of pathway to possibly get in there, but it's not going to be easy. But yeah, let's see how we get on, and hopefully we come over a good result. Come on, your ones.